eyes on you, Abba Father. We turn our eyes on you. You have given us the spirit of bondage again, the fear of the spirit of adoption, where we cry out, Abba Father. Somebody call Daddy God, Papa God, Papa God, Daddy, 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 Daddy. I never had a real daddy. I don't know a father's love. Teach me a father's love. Love me, Heavenly Father. Let me feel your love. Let me know your love. Help me to trust you, Lord. You don't trust people. You don't trust people. You always suspicious of everybody. What's their angle? What's their angle? Don't have to be no angle. They're showing you the love of God. Thank you, Jesus. 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 Thank you, Lord. Praise you, Jesus. We open the door of our heart, God, and we say, come in, Jesus. We don't have time to be religious and to play church games and just go through rituals and customs and smiling, and we know we're not happy. Smiling, but we know that it's inside. We've been full of hurt and pain. Trying to get over the struggle, trying to get over it in our strength. But God, we can't do it. We surrender, God. We can't do it. You got to do it in us, God. Hallelujah. We believe, God. We believe, God. We believe today. We believe that you are. We believe, God. We believe. We consider myself a good giver. So I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and give this $100. So I went ahead and gave it, you know, and Pastor said, what you guys? I gave 100 totally. And so I said, okay, I gave it. Then I went to the bank, my account was overdrawn $100 some dollars in the other bank. I said, oh Lord, I'll get that 100, but you know what? So yesterday at Walmart, I saw one of our ex-members, said hi to her, and I'm riding on that little Migo thing, you know, was riding around with Mary Jean with me. Then also she come back and she hugged me, she said, I want to give you something. 5 $20 bills, $100.
You don't know
There was such an anointing on Apostle Thursday, and he preached that message on the creative word. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light. We release the creative word. Speak it out of your mouth. Speak it out of your mouth. What you want from God, speak it out of your mouth. Let there be light. Come on and speak the creative word. What are you believing God for? What are you believing God? I believe in God that when I go in there for that procedure, I will come out fine from that heart procedure. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Let there be light. I will live. I will not die and declare the works of the Lord. God, you promised me. You are promise keeper. Light in the darkness. Promise keeper. Way maker. Miracle worker. Light in the darkness. Somebody needs to say, let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light in me. Let there be light. I was in the audience, but I felt such a powerful anointing coming from that word that he was speaking. And I told him that's the first time I ever really understood why I need to confess the word out loud more than instead of thinking it in my head, say it out of my mouth. Open your mouth and say something. Open your mouth and say something. Come on. Open your mouth and say the word. Somebody say speak the word. Somebody say speak the word. Somebody say speak the word. You gotta speak it. What do you want from God? Say it. Say it. Say it. You got to say it. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Come on, redeemed ones. Say so. You're the
heed the Holy Spirit wants to say to the body of Christ. Ministers, you know the protocol for those who are new and heard something from the Lord and want to share with the body. Please write it down and present it to the pulpit that it might be judged. And our prophetess will make the determination if it is to be released at this time. Ministers, please come forward.
I heard that when we come in here, when we come into the sanctuary, we come before God, that it's not always for ourselves that we should stand up and give God what's due to Him, His praise and His honor and His glory. That there's people out there that are relying on us, that we don't really have a right to come in melancholy, fatigued, concerned with who else is here and who's not here, who's looking from the right or to your left, that we're just supposed to look up. Like the song said, we focus our eyes on Christ, and it's not always for ourselves, it's for others that desperately need that. Because when we lift God on high and we praise and magnify His name, then He moves. He's sovereign and He can do whatever He wants, whenever He wants, but He reacts to us. Like Apostle tells us, sometimes it's the kingdom doesn't start with you first, it starts outward. Like you have to give yourselves, and then the kingdom returns back. So come in here each and every time willing to lay it down, sacrifice, give Him a sacrifice of praise, if not for yourself, but for the others in your lives that desperately, desperately need it. Amen.
Waymaker, miracle worker, the great physician is here. The atmosphere has been set. Before you go for surgery, it has to be a sterilization first. They have to prep you. And this sterilization is taking place right now. For God is doing a transplant spiritually and physically for the believers of God, for all His people. Do you believe? And then He led me to John 5, where it says, "In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time in the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first, after stirring the water, was made well of whatever the disease he had." That's the sterilization. He's setting the atmosphere. And then it goes on to say, a certain man who had an infirmity for 38 years. Jesus saw him laying there, and he already knew he had been in that condition for a long time. How long are you going to stay in that situation? How long are you going to stay in that condition? And he said, do you want to be made well? As prophetess said, you got to speak in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is set. Do you believe what is being said, what is taking place? Do you believe it? It's focused faith, as she said. Focus. We got to keep our faith focused on Him. We focusing on all these other situations.
That's right.
And the sterilization can't take place because we focused on the contamination of the situation. When He's telling us to focus on Him, let the transplant take place. And when I look up the word transplant, it means to move or transfer something to another place or situation. Typically some effort or upheaval. Synonyms for it is to transfer, transport, move, remove, shift, displace, relocate. Let the transplant take place.
Zeddy, you here, right? Stand up. She's having surgery. What day? Tomorrow? Tomorrow? Okay, that's Bobby's sister. Zeddy having surgery tomorrow. Bobby, you gonna be at the hospital on Tuesday with yours?
Stand up. Come on, stand up, Bobby. Anybody else having surgery this week? Besides, okay, I'm having surgery on the 26th for my tooth. I don't know what happened, but something broke in my tooth and they got to take it out. So that's me, surgery. And I had to stop the Eliquis for 2 days before the surgery, the blood thinner. You know, I'm taking a blood thinner. Rosalie, what you?
My dad might have surgery. They don't know yet.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Shalanda.
I'm standing up for James. She been they left before we get here this morning. She had Russian Genesis with chest pain. So it's
Okay.
on my phone, so I had text. So if y'all can pray for them.
Okay, James. Okay. James was with us yesterday, wasn't he? Sitting next to me? They were singing in the practice and everything. Okay, so keep standing up, Shalanda, for James. Okay, stand up for your dad. Where's all my minister? Tomasa already had cataract surgery. When is your next cataract surgery, Tomasa? Do you know? Is it tomorrow? Oh, Tomasa's is tomorrow. Okay. Everybody come to the altar standing up for surgeries. Dave, Richard, come on, Les. My ministers, come on up. Help pray for all these people. Get the anointing oil. Get it and let's anoint everybody. Shar, you help your husband. Come on, Leon, you and Ona. Okay, Sherelle. Yes. When? Your brother had a stroke? Is he living? Okay, Bertha's brother had a stroke this week. Come on. All my ministers up there helping out. We're going to anoint you and lay hands and speak the word. Speak the word. We're not going to take all day. Mother Baker, you can pray right out there where you are. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you. Okay. Well, they tested him. They found stage 4 cancer. And they say, what's your brother's name? Clarence. Everybody got their faith focused this way. Come on up, ministers, and lay hands. Everybody, I want you to go down the line and lay hands. Everybody just lay, say, in the name of Jesus, they shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. Okay, everybody listening to me. Listen, every minister, go down and pray for everybody. Go down the list and lay hands on everybody. So go down like a tunnel, but we just going down. Don't take all day. I lay hands in Jesus' name. They shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. That's what I want you to speak. They shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. I release the anointing that's in me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He has anointed me. He has anointed going forth and you were singing, you might not see it and you might not feel it, but God is still working. He is still working. And so the Lord led me to 2 Peter 3:9. And the Bible reads, the Lord is not slack concerning his promises, as some men count slackness. Say, God is still working. But is long suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. God is not slack concerning his promises. Say, God is still working. If you have a family member you've been praying for repentance, a son, a daughter, a brother, a mother, a cousin, say, God, do it now, God. You are long suffering, God. I believe, God, they shall come to repentance, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning. I just want to kind of confirm what Minister Shawnette said. God had, just as she was talking, God had said to me that all of those that are needing healing or promises or things that he has said to them, come to him, come to the light. He is the light. And so when she said that, I was like, wow, God is good. So just remember that whatever you need, Jesus is the light. He's the light. Go to him. There's no other one like him. Just go to Jesus. Amen.
Praise God. Well, God is doing a great thing here in Saginaw. And he's going to continue to do even more. But when God is doing something, he deals with the land. The land is, there's different meanings of the land in the Bible. The land could be in Proverbs 28:19. He says, he who tills his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows frivolity will have poverty enough. Now this is the year of press. Apostle said this is the year where we press, because we're putting our hands to the plow and we're tilling the land. That is the land of your heart. The land is your heart. And when you're tilling your land, you're breaking up fallow ground, which is unforgiveness. And stones pop up. Those are the things that pop up when somebody cuts you off on the road. And that rises up in you and says, oh, that person, yeah. You get angry. That's anger, bitterness, resentment. And then the curse. I know personally, I come from a line of alcoholics. And even now, I still think about it, of having a drink. I don't do it, but the thoughts still come. But God is tilling the land. We are helping him till the land. And we are becoming good ground. Amen. So clean your life up. Clean it up. Let God have his way in your heart.
About the heart. I was talking to him about the heart. I said, Lord, how can we change our heart? The Old Testament said the heart is deceitfully wicked. The New Testament talks about, Jesus said, I'll give you a new heart and a new spirit. I said, well, Jesus, you promised us a new heart and a new spirit. But God said you got to take responsibility to add the word in your heart, right? He said the penetrating words. There's life when the word penetrates, it'll bring deliverance. You got to get the word in your heart. That's why Apostle got us memorizing scripture, because we got to meditate day and night so we can have good success. See, it says in Psalms 1, what? Be planted by the rivers of water and you'll bear fruit. If you get planted and study and meditate, read it day and night, and you'll bear fruit in your season. Seek thy word I have hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Not the word I have hidden in my mind. Thy word I have hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you. We got to get the word in our heart. And the devil wants us running, having fun, being distracted, everything, but hiding the word in our heart.
word in our heart, then we know what to tell others. Amen. I heard the Lord saying, feed my sheep. We have to feed our sheep. There's people that's lost out there, people. We have to tell them about Jesus. We know he's a way maker. We know he's a healer. Or do they believe it? We have to get in our heart so we can share with them. God can bring you out of this. God can heal you. God can deliver you. God can set you free. We want to get Jesus. We want to get salvation to the people so they can get saved, delivered, and set free. And then once they get saved, free, they get filled with the Holy Spirit. Then they have that power to go, that power to go high, where they can tell others about Jesus. They won't be ashamed of the gospel. We got to stop being ashamed of the gospel when we go to dinners or we go to open houses. We go places we don't even mention Jesus. We have to mention Jesus. We have to let him know that he's our Savior. We have to know that he's a way maker. Let them know that he's a way maker. They don't know. They don't know. They try to do it on their own, but we have to let them know. We have to talk Jesus everywhere we go. I know my son used to tell me all the time, that's all you talk about, Mama, Jesus. He didn't want to hear it. He wanted to poke his little weed and whatever he do. He didn't want to hear it. That's all you talk about, Jesus. That's all I know. That's all I know is about Jesus. He woke me up this morning. That's all I know. I don't know nothing else. We don't know nothing else but Jesus. We don't know my son. Praise the Lord. Woo, people try to preach today, huh? But what I heard, I heard so much, and so much happened this morning. It's the thought. I heard the Lord say we need to change our thoughts. We need to go to Philippians 4:8 and think on the things that he tells us to think on. And then I felt so much peace. And when Shawnette came up here and said, I was feeling exactly what she was saying already before she came up here. I was feeling it inside. And I believe that was when that you did lay hands on me, I know your name. Valerie. And what I felt when you was doing that, I felt bones popping. And I felt, like a massage was on the inside of me. My shoulders and stuff, still I can feel the pain, but I can move it better than I was moving. And so I heard the Lord saying, peace in the midst of the storm. Whatever you're going through, you may feel pain. Sometimes you may feel fear. But regardless, you can have peace in the midst of the storm. So he says, peace, 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 be still.
Praise the Lord. When we were worshiping and singing, Promise Keeper, Miracle Worker, God took me back, and he showed me that our biggest hindrance is our own minds. We stop our own selves because we think we're not good enough. Think about the miracles, where he brought you from, what he brought you through. He's not a one-time God. He is not a one-time God. He doesn't do a miracle, bring you out one time and then leave you on your own. He's always there. He's always with you. He is a repeating God. He will do it over and over and over and over again. No matter how many times it takes, because he loves us just that much. He loves us just that much. And we are a walking, living, breathing testimony. We are his hands and feet. Every time God does a miracle, when we pray and the prayer is answered, yourself, share with someone else. The person that you prayed for and God brought them out and they saw their miracle, tell them to share, because if that person is not saved, when they are speaking that's bringing salvation and healing to that soul and mind and body. It's strengthening their faith. So stop blocking God. Stop blocking the word. Stop blocking it. Stop looking at your limitations and begin to see the supernatural movement of God. Hallelujah. In the name of Jesus. Glory, Father, we give you praise today, my God. We thank you, my Lord. Hallelujah. That you are God, my Lord. Hallelujah. That never change. You are the same today, yesterday, and forever. In the name of Jesus. And Father, we step up, my God, and take our rightful place in the supernatural, my God. In the name of Jesus. We will begin to decree, my God, declare, my Lord, and see things change and move. Hallelujah. In the name of Jesus, we give you glory. Hallelujah. I'm excited about seeing the things of God. Hallelujah. Manifest. These are our announcements. Men's Day, June 30th, speaker at 4 p.m. That will be Pastor D. Johnson. Supernatural Sunday, July 7th at 6:30 p.m. Invite others. Help Ministry Training will be July 20th at 11 a.m. Ministers Les and Shar Keys will be our special speakers today. Amen. Hallelujah. Yes. Fasting and prayer every Wednesday at 6 p.m. United Prayer. Tell someone about Jesus and invite them to church. Hallelujah. Do we have any first-time visitors in the house today? Praise the Lord. We are all family.
Sherry, on the June 25th, Apostle and I have been married 42 years.
Woo! Yeah! 42 years. Amen. Amen. I just had an idea.
42 years. We still look good.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Hallelujah. It's offering time. Hallelujah. It's time to bless the Lord. Hallelujah. In the name of Jesus. If you need an envelope, please raise your hand. One will be provided. If you are writing checks today, please make your check out to COA or Center of Attraction Church. And while you're preparing your offerings, we stand on the Word of God here. So I will be reading Malachi 3, starting at verse 8 and reading through to verse 12. It is written, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts. Please stand. Let's do our affirmation for our offering together. And I know sometimes people may think that, oh, I'm going to pick this one thing out of this confession and I'm going to believe it. Me, I'm greedy. I want all of them. I want all. All of them. I confess and believe every one of them. So let's say this like we really believe it. I know one of my sons do. Love you. All together, as we give our tithes and offerings, we are believing you, Lord, for jobs and better jobs, raises and bonuses, benefits, sales and commissions, estates and inheritance, interest and income, rebates and returns, checks in the mail, healing and divine health, gifts and surprises, finding money, bills paid off, settlements, debts demolished, royalties received, scholarships and grants, contracts, money management, 100-fold return according to your word in Jesus' name. You're in the hands of our ushers. Stretch your hands forward. Father, we thank you for the seed, my Lord. We thank you, my Lord, that this is good ground in the name of Jesus. We thank you, my God, for multiplying 1,000-fold return. We thank you, my Lord, for the kingdom. Hallelujah. Extending and advancing in Christ Jesus' name. We thank you, my Lord, hallelujah, for the souls that this seed will reach. We give you all praise, thanks, and the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Hallelujah. It's time for the word. Yeah. Hallelujah. It is always exciting.
Sharp and let's just go in first.
Yes. Okay, my brother first, yes. Father, we thank you for this mighty man of God, this mighty man of valor. We thank you, my Lord, for the seed that you have placed deep within his spirit, my God. We thank you, my Lord, hallelujah, that every heart, every mind, my God, and every spirit, my Lord, hallelujah, of your children, my God, will receive the engrafted word, my Lord, that you have placed into this mighty man of valor today. In Christ Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord. All righty. Apostle made it clear. I only got 30 mics, so we'll make this quick. All right, so we're going to go to Mark chapter 10, verse 46 through 52. We are dealing with blind Bartimaeus. Blind Bartimaeus. And the Bible reads, "And they came to Jericho, and as he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great number of people, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the wayside begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, 'Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me.' And many charged him that he should hold his peace. But he cried the more a great deal, Thou son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. And they called the blind man, saying unto him, Be of good comfort, rise, he calleth thee. And he, casting away his garment, rose and came to Jesus. And Jesus answered and said unto him, What wilt thou that I should do unto thee? The blind man said unto him, Lord, that I might receive my sight. And Jesus said unto him, Go thy way, thy faith has made thee whole. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus in the way. So, the story of blind Bartimaeus, the message or the title of my message is 3 Keys to Unlocking the Supernatural. 3 keys that blind Bartimaeus used to unlock the supernatural. Say, we're still pressing. Come on, we're still pressing in this church. We're trying to unlock the supernatural in our lives. Is that right? I mean, we're calling on miracles, creative miracles. We are calling on the supernatural hand of God to move in this place. Say, we're still pressing.
We're still pressing.
All right, so the first thing you need to do, you might want to write this down if you don't know the word. If you do know the word, you still might want to write this down. Number one key to unlocking the supernatural is you have to know your covenant. You have to know your agreement. You have to know your contract. You have to know your deal. You have to know your pledge. And you need to know your guarantee when it comes to the Lord. All right? So the Bible says that they came through Jericho. And I was like, what? Why Jericho? Why did you even mention that? Well, that was the beginning city where the children of Israel started taking over their promised land, and the Lord was walking through to reestablish what he had established in the past. If you need to get to your Jericho or walk through your Jericho, you need to understand that. You need to understand your covenant. Now, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, meant son of the unclean. His father, for whatever reason, was ceremonially unclean. And so Bartimaeus was born blind. That kind of speaks to your identity. See, if you got an identity because of what your family is about, let me tell you today, the Lord will set you free. You don't have to be bound by what your family did. You don't have to be bound by what your father did. You will be set free in the name of Jesus. Why? Because blind Bartimaeus understood his guarantee. He understood the covenant. So he was sitting by the wayside begging. If you have a job that you don't like, you need to figure out how to change that thing, because that's what he did. Because he was blind. He had no choice. So guess what? You have choices today, because Jesus will set you free. You don't have to be by this blind, this roadside begging for anything anymore. Why? Because you are the son and the daughter of a king. You are royalty. Hallelujah. And then it says he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth. And let me tell you this. I don't know if you guys ever done this, but I have. I looked up my name before. Leslie Dwayne Key. How many guys know there's a lot of them dudes out there? It's a lot of Leslie Dwayne Keys out there. It's a lot of people with my name. I was surprised. I'm like, look at the Sam Nugget that's going on. I thought I was the only one. But guess what? It was a lot of Jesus out there too. It was a lot of people named Yeshua. It was a lot of people, but when he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth. So you got to know who you're hearing about. You got to know the right name that you're listening for. See, he couldn't see, but he could hear. And he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth. See, and then when he did that, he cried out. You got to hear the right name. The question is, what do you do when you hear the truth? See, he heard the truth. He said, my God, it's Jesus of Nazareth. What do you do when you hear the truth? Do you cry out with your mouth what you know is in your heart? See, a lot of us, we keep silent what's in our heart. We feel it don't take all that. Yes, it do. Yes, it do. You better do like he did. You better cry out, Jesus! All right. Now, once you ID your source, once you identify the right person, then you have to tell him what you want. Son of David, have mercy on me. See, when he spoke of that, he understood Jeremiah 23, 5 through 6. Can we go there real quick? See, when he spoke, Son of David, he knew he was speaking to royalty. He knew he was speaking to the king. He knew he was speaking to the one that he read about, that he heard about, because he couldn't read. So he was speaking to the one that he heard about, that he was taught about. So the Bible reads, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will rise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. Verse 6, and in his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name, whereby he shall be called the Lord our righteousness. Now that was good right there. I'm like, Jesus, okay, so Son of David equals out to the Lord our righteousness. Right? And so the Lord our righteousness, it really means Jehovah is our right. We have a right to Jehovah, y'all. If you are a king, or you are a queen, or you are a son of the Lord God, you have a right to Jehovah. He says the Jehovah is our, or Jehovah Tiskanu, symbolic epithet of the Messiah and of Jerusalem. So when he said that, he was acknowledging that Jesus was the Messiah. Son of David, have mercy on me. So then, after he cried that out, he was acknowledging, he understood who was there. Right? So he understood his covenant. That's number one. You got to understand your covenant, your agreement, your contract. You got to understand the deal that was sealed in blood for you, the pledge, and the guarantee. So number two, to unlocking the keys, is you have to act on the faith that you have, that you know, and that you understand. You have to act on it. See, he started acting on it even more when the crowd said, hold your peace. Hold your peace. Blind people and poor people at that time were at the lower rung of society. See, people didn't deal with him. That's why they yelled at him. They tried to shout him down. I hope you guys don't shout people down. Tell them to hold their peace. It don't take all that. Just go in your corner and pray. You let them cry out, Son of David. And so, who is telling you to shut up? Who's in your life telling you to shut up? I hope you're not telling other people to shut up, but who are you telling to shut up? Be prepared to deal with many who will be embarrassed by your voice. Some people are going to be embarrassed by your voice. That's okay. Let them be embarrassed. You cry out, Son of David, have mercy on me. Keep shouting. Keep pressing like Bartimaeus did. Why? Because he expected at that time to be what? Transformed. He fought for his transformation. He pressed through that thing. Son of David, have mercy on me. Speaks about why he asked for mercy. See, he asked for mercy because, once again, people in that time believed that if you were born blind, or if you were born deaf or dumb, that somehow you deserved it. Somehow it was your father's fault or your bloodline fault, bloodline issues, and so therefore you deserve what you got. But Jesus was a different kind of religious leader. See, he was a religious leader that went out to the poor. See, he touched the leper. See, before they would touch them, I'm not touching you, right? But Jesus would touch them. Jesus was that kind of leader to where he dealt with the poor of society. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. See, he stood on Psalms 34, 6, 18, and 19. See, he understood that somebody was coming to deal with the poor. Somebody was coming to deal with the brokenhearted. Jesus, have mercy on me. And then when he cried that, all of a sudden, Jesus stood still. Your cry has to be holy in order for the Lord to stop moving, for him to stand still and listen to you? Do you have a holy cry where Jesus would take notice of you? People could say you're not worthy, but God. People will change their tune when they know that you are called. So when when Jesus stood still and he said, have him come here. Oh, be of good cheer, my brother. He called it you. Oh yeah, people gonna change their tune when they know that the Lord has put something on your life. See, you gotta remember, it ain't about what you used to be, it's about what you're going to be, right? Because we're by faith, strength by strength, grace on grace. We keep going to where God has called us. He is calling us to be in his image. We are supposed to be in the image of Christ. So don't allow anybody in the past to dictate your future. Because when they see it, they're going to be like, I remember when. They always do.
That's it right there.
Because he was looking to be transformed. And then he got to the part to where when Jesus called him, the Bible says that he cast away his garment. Or he cast away his cloak. And if you know anything about their traditions or culture, a blind person, a cloak was one of their best worldly possessions. It kept them warm. When they were sitting on the side of the road, they sat on it. They get to collect their money in it. Everything was there. That was like one of their main pieces of garments or something to identify who they were. But if you know, he acted upon his faith and he cast it away. In order to cast away something that's so dear to you, you got to believe that the Lord Jesus Christ will have mercy on you. So I'm saying, what are you holding to? What is the cloak in your life that you're holding on to? And when Jesus is calling you, you can't, for whatever reason, throw it off. You, for whatever reason, refuse to throw it off. For whatever reason, you can't cut it loose. I'm saying, cast your garment away and go to him. Because that takes faith. Yes. Cast away anything that anchors you to the world. Another thing he did to activate his faith. The Bible says he got up and went to Jesus. And did you notice that Jesus stopped and said, come to me? Jesus didn't run to him. Why? Because Jesus needed to know how strong his faith was. I'm telling you today, get yourself up and go to the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Jesus, and then blind Bartimaeus didn't say, well, I can't, Jesus, because I'm blind. He didn't say that. He just went and started running. I wonder, did he run into anybody? I can see it in my mind's eye, right? Jesus right there, he done, that you? They push, oh, Jesus, that's you right here. That takes faith, though. It takes faith to go to somewhere where you can't see and trust that the Lord is there because he's waiting on you. I'm saying, get yourself up and run towards the Lord. Amen. Little acts of faith will constitute the body of your work. So let me say this. A lot of us are working to be faith giants. And we all want to be faith giants, but sometimes it's very difficult to know where to start. How much time I got? Prophet Bobby, I know you're going to keep me on. You're going to jump up and jump on me. I'm good. I got what? 10 minutes. Okay. Good. So little acts of faith will constitute the body of your work. What I mean by that is in school, I deal with young people all the time, and you got a lot of young people that know how to play the game. They know how to get in just enough trouble not to get kicked out. Just enough trouble not to get suspended. But see, I keep telling them that Mr. Key is smarter than you. I've been in the earth longer than you. So this is what I tell them. Okay, I can see right now you're causing a disruption here. You're causing a disruption there. You're doing these things just enough not to get kicked out. But if I look at the body of your work, I can expel you. What? I say, yes, sir. I can say, in spite of being given every opportunity to be successful, this young person continues to violate the student code of conduct, and as a result of their continuation, I want to put them up for 180 days. Oh, Mr. Key, man, I'm straight. I'm good. I'm not going to do okay. So the body of your work. So by you doing little things in faith, God, I believe. I'm going to pay my tithes. And God, I believe I'm going to pay it forward. And God, I believe I'm going to go and pray for this person. And so you start activating your faith little by little, inch by inch. The body of your workers start getting bigger and bigger. And when the test comes, the test of your faith comes, you will be able to stand strong with shaky knees. Yeah, it's going to be a little shaky sometimes. That's an oxymoron in it, standing strong with shaky knees. But you will be able to stand there and exercise your faith. Little acts of faith. Remember, faith does not come easy. It must overcome obstacles to what you seek. What are you seeking? Remember, anything you're going after, it's going to take faith. Because the enemy just ain't going to let you have it just because. All right, last thing. So blind Bartimaeus went through all that. He knew his covenant. He heard the right name. He shouted out, Son of David, the Lord God, our righteousness. I have a right to your mercy. I have a right to your mercy. And I'm going to act on my faith. I'm going to show you that I have the faith to receive what I want from you. So you have to know what you want as it applies to the promises. Now listen, that is so important as it applies to the promises. So let me tell you what ain't a promise. Lord, I want that husband. That ain't mine. No, you're not getting that.
That's right. That's right.
No, you're not getting that. Lord, I want his car. Stop it. You're not getting that. You might want a car like that, but you're not getting that. So it's got to be according to the promises. Okay? So get that. Don't say, don't get it twisted. I get it. What will thou, or Jesus said, what will that I should do unto thee? And you would think it would be obvious that blind Bartimaeus would say, I want to receive my sight. But obviously, or in my mind as I studied it out, it wasn't obvious. Because blind Bartimaeus could have been like, Lord, I need some more money. Or Lord, I need food. Lord, I need things of the world. I need things that won't last. I need things that don't matter. I need things that won't do me any spiritual good. Right? So he didn't ask for money. He did not ask for food. So you have to be careful of what you ask for. What are you asking for that really doesn't matter to God? Because the Bible says that if that he shall supply all our needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus, not some of our needs, but all of our needs, right? And he also said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added unto thee. So did blind Bartimaeus understand that concept? Wondering minds want to know. So he wanted more of Jesus because, so he asked Jesus, he told Jesus, I want to receive my sight. Right? I need my sight. And so Jesus said, according to your faith. Right? One, that's a key to unlocking the supernatural. According to your faith, let it be done. And the Bible says he immediately went away seeing. So a lot of times when the supernatural comes upon us, it's because we just don't you hate stumbling in the dark for a miracle? You know how you get a miracle in your life and you just kind of happen to it just come up on you suddenly, and then, or you go to pray. I mean, one time my wife and I, we was praying in the bedroom, and we was dealing with Passover, and an apostle was talking about bringing first fruits, and I had seen a television program that night, so that Sunday morning I had to show her, and so I'm showing her this program before we go to church. That all of a sudden the Holy Spirit showed up, boom, in the room. It came so heavy, we just started crying. It was amazing. Amen. It was amazing, and I'm saying, God, how do I get there again? It was like a stab in the dark. I don't like stabs in the dark. I don't like stabs in the dark. But now, as my faith grows, I understand that it doesn't matter what I see, and it doesn't matter how I feel. It only matters what I believe. A test of your faith. So now we just act on it. Honey, what you gonna do? Me and my wife, we got this thing. Anytime we gotta act on something. So what you gonna do about that? That's what we tell each other. So what you gonna do about that there? And so we just have to act on it. So according to his faith, his blindness was cured. And he did not simply go home and say, Mom, Dad, I can see you now. The Bible says he went with Jesus in the way. Listen to me. Anytime you receive anything from the Lord, anytime you know that you are a king's kid, anytime that the Lord has blessed you, you need to follow him in the way. Follow him in the way. So he wanted more of Jesus. That wasn't enough for him. So once you are delivered, you cannot go back. Listen, if you go back, the enemy going to toy with you. Once God deals with you and sets you free, and then you mess around, I'm saying God will take you back. But if you go back into the world, the enemy is going to walk in and out of your life like a city with broken down walls. As he pleases. As he pleases. So be careful. Once you get a piece of Jesus, don't go back. Now, some of us, we have lost our way. I'm saying, come to the light. And that light is Jesus Christ. So the three things. Know your covenant. Activate the faith that you know, that you have, and that you understand. And know what you want as it applies to the promises. Amen.
Lord, my brother never disappoints. Amen. Father, we thank you for this mighty woman of God. We give you praise today, my Lord. We thank you, my Lord, for the word that you have implanted in her. In Christ Jesus' name, my Lord, prepare our hearts, my Lord, to receive your gift. In Christ Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen, amen. Whew, that was a mighty word. How you all doing this morning? This morning, first I want to thank God. I want to thank Prophetess and Apostle for allowing me to minister this morning. My message today is Mission Impossible that became possible. And I'm coming from Mark 5.
All right.
I'm coming from Mark 5, 25 through 34. The woman with the issue of blood.
Come on now.
And I'm reading from the NIV. Ooh, forgive me, y'all. I'm a little nervous here. And it reads, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. Because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be made healed. Well, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was free from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see them crowding against you," his disciples answered. "And yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembled with fear, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." I want to just kind of stop right there. As I was studying this out, and I kept asking the Lord why this woman was, where she was at. This woman, she made a decision that day. She heard about Jesus walking past. That's my interpretation. She heard about him. Throughout all the village, people are talking about Jesus, and he's coming. And so she herself was like, Jesus is coming. She made this determination in her mind that if she could just touch his clothes, she would be healed. This woman made a decision immediately. She activated her faith immediately. When she activated her faith, she knew right then and there that she could be healed. I put in my note, her faith was ignited. Bam! What came to me at that moment when it came in my mind was ignited. I remember a cartoon that I used to watch, and it used to be called Wonder Twins, Ignite. And so as I remember that, I thought about her faith. Her faith ignited in her immediately when she heard about Jesus. And so this woman, when she heard this and she saw Jesus, once again, I'm seeing this in my mind, she saw Jesus walking by. And she was already in this place. And she like, if I can just touch Jesus, I will be made whole. This woman decided in her heart that she was going to go ahead and step out in courage. She stepped out, she moved out. She moved into position. She saw Jesus walking past, and all these people was pressing him, and all these people was around him and touching him. But she knew that if she could just touch him, she would be made whole. This woman moved out into position. She moved in her courage. She decided, and this is my mind, she decided that I'm going to move. Now this woman had to decide that she was going to get to a place where she can touch him. Now this woman, if you read back in Leviticus 15 and 25, it talks about how if you have some issues in your body, you could not be in the public like that. You were put out on the outside. You was outside the village for a while. It depends on what you had in your body, what you was dealing with at that time. This woman dealt with this for 12 long years. Long years. Now when she dealt with that 12 long years, she was just hurt. They didn't put her outside the camp. She'd been ostracized. She was separate from her family and friends. She could no longer be with all the people. She was in pain. She was distressed. She was hurting. So this woman, once again, she saw Jesus going by. And I saw her. And when I saw her looking at Jesus walking by, she knew that she had to figure out how to get there, how she can get to him. Because she already see all these people crowding her. And she had to make a decision right then and there. Her courage kicked in, like I said before. Now this is me seeing her. She decided that she was going to crawl to the ground. She made that decision to get in the midst of them without them noticing her, because she could not be where she was supposed to be. She was hiding in plain sight where no one could see her. Everybody is moving with Jesus. Whew. They moving. And she said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I will be made whole. So she got down on her knees. This is me seeing her on her knees. And she began to crawl. And she decided, I'm going to put my hand. I'm going to weave my hand between his legs, because I am not supposed to be here. No one is supposed to see me. No one is supposed to touch me. I'm not supposed to touch no one. So she decided to do it anyway. Her courage was kicked in. She decided that I'm going to do this anyway. She became very determined. Her determination kicked in. And she touched his garment. She said, "Whew, I'm healed." She stepped back and thought about it. She said, "I'm healed." And Jesus said, he said, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "You got to ask us who touched you? All these people is surrounding you, pressing you, and you asking us who touched you?" In my mind, it was like, "You, Jesus, you should know." But Jesus said once again, "Who touched my clothes?" And as that woman realized that she was healed, I saw her walking away. She started walking. She was like, "Whoo, I'm healed. I'm healed. I'm healed." She was walking, healed. Then Jesus turned around and he was looking for him. Whoever touched him, he was looking for him. And I saw the crowd kind of spread out a little bit. And he's still looking. And she realized, oh, they see me. Now, once again, this woman wasn't supposed to be where she was at. She was hiding in plain sight. She was not supposed to touch no one. She was not even supposed to sit where they sit, or they sit where she sits. So when Jesus began to say, "Who touched me?" and everybody realized it, and she realized, "Oh, I better go back. I need to go back and tell him the whole truth." You know what she said? She said, "Lord, I touch you." This is my interpretation. "Lord, I touch you. I touch you because I was sick in my body. I've been sick for 12 years. No doctors could help me. They took my money. And now I don't have anything. But when I come to you, I put my hands on your garment, Lord. And I said, I'm going to be healed today. I'm getting healed today." She said today. She didn't say next week. She didn't say 2 days later. She said today. Today. So Jesus said, because of your faith, daughter, you healed. He also told her in one version, "Go in peace and stay continuously healed." Now in my mind, I'm seeing she done got healed. She done got peace. She done got her joy back. She done got her family back. She done got her friends back. She's been able to go back into the village and be around other people. Now how much do you know? She was struggling with a whole lot of things. So her mission was to get healed. Her mission was an impossible thing because she knew that if she had been seen, she could have been stoned to death. That's just my interpretation. She could have been killed for what she was doing, because by the law, she wasn't supposed to be there. By that law, she was not supposed to be there. So I just say, where is your courage? Where is your determination for the thing that God had promised you? She knew that once she got healed, it was a good thing. She was ready to run off and have a good time. But when he saw her, she was like, "Jesus, it was me." She just fell to her knees. Even though she was in fear and trembling, she fell. And she said, "It was me, Lord." And he said, "You healed." It was her faith that healed her. She took action. She moved into position. She made decisions. She spoke what she wanted. Have you been speaking what God has said to speak for yourself? Are you believing the way this woman believed? Let me tell you my little story. Now, this woman, mind you, she suffered with this 12 years. I had a similar condition, but not 12 years. I went to the doctor one day because I've been dealing with this same type of issue for 2 years. And this doctor that I went to, he was my regular doctor. And I went to the doctor and I told, he took tests and I told him what was all going on. And he said, well, if you take this medicine, you'll be all right. And I said, I can't take this medicine because I knew it would make me ill. And I thought he knew, but obviously he didn't. So I decided to go to a different doctor. And this doctor told me, he said, well, let me take some tests. We're going to run some tests and see what's going on. And I said, okay. So we ran tests. He come back and he looked at me. He said, you the walking dead. I said, I would receive that in my mind. I said, I'm not believing that. He said, you have lost so much blood in your body. I don't know how you're walking and living the way you're living. And I said in my mind once again, I have a God who I serve that is a living God. And I know that he's a healer. Now, how much do you know that I didn't have a supernatural healing? This woman had supernatural healing. I didn't have a supernatural healing. I remember a prophetess talking about there's several ways to a path of healing. Well, one of my pathways to healing was having surgery. So I had to have surgery. But God did it. God made sure that it was done the right way. It may not have been the same way. Your healing may not come the way mine were. Or your healing may not come the way hers were. But you have to still believe and still trust that God is going to do what he said he would do. You know that healing is the children's bread. That's what belongs to us. She had rights to that healing. She had rights because she was a child of God. She belonged to that family. She had the rights. And we have rights too because we belong to Jesus. I want to give you all some scriptures just to, boost your faith up. Hallelujah. Amen. Faith building scriptures. And I believe in these scriptures. The first scripture is Hebrews 11:1. And the next scripture is, and you don't have to put them up, I'm just, write them off. Hebrews 6, Matthew 11 and 28, 1 Peter 5 and 7, Mark 10 and 27, 2 Corinthians 5 and 7, Romans 10 and 10, and Proverbs 18 and 21. I pray that you all read these scriptures, use them, and I pray that God will use supernatural healing or whatever the healing path that he has for you. In the name of Jesus, you all be blessed.
I don't know if anybody else needs prayer. We have moved so powerfully today. Does anybody else need prayer? You can have Les and Shara come up and pray for you if you need prayer. It seems like the Holy Spirit has emphasized today healing, didn't he? The whole service. Was there anyone else? Because I tell you, just a powerful move. Hallelujah. Okay. I know Pops will be very proud. See, we train our ministers here. We had minister training yesterday. And the ministers are being allowed to preach on Sunday. Did you know that some churches, they don't let you, nobody preaches but the senior pastor on Sunday? Or the assistant? But we're training our ministers and they're being allowed to preach male and female because God has no respect to persons, with neither male nor female in Christ. So is there, we see somebody coming up for prayer. Is there anybody else that want prayer? Hallelujah, Shara's up here. Yes, come on up. And Eris, that music was wonderful today. Wonderful. Anointing, powerful anointing. Thank you. Somebody else is up for prayer. Great. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Valerie, help Minister Leon at the altar. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Praise. Dave, come up and help Shar. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Seek it up. Shake it up. We teach order that women don't need to lay hands on men and men don't need to lay hands on women. So I call 2 different ministers up to help. Amen. Let's just do decent and in order. If Cheryl felt led to lay hands on him, he could be there. Dave is helping to put his hands on him. Same thing over here, Val is helping. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Trying to teach our ministers how to minister. Hallelujah. I'm in Flint. Apostle loves to lay hands quick. I say, y'all get up there and help. Put your hand there, then, you know. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. We thank you. We thank anybody else need prayer. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Yeah, come on up. They're praying really quick, and this is awesome and amazing. They both preached on healing. Wasn't that good? Lord, I thank you, Lord, that you're the healer, that you're the same today, yesterday, and forever. You're still Dr. Jesus. You said, I'm the Lord that healeth thee. I sent my word and I healed your disease. I am the Lord thy healer. Then you said, I give you power. I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions. And you said the same ministry that Jesus had, we would have, and we would do greater works. We thank you for the greater works being manifested. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Come on up. Shower's right here. Somebody needs prayer. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Leon is available. If anybody wants to come up, Minister Leon is available. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Remember, this is a apostolic center. We're a church that believes in the full gospel. We're Pentecostal, charismatic, full gospel. We believe in the whole Bible. God wants to use believers. Ephesians 4 says that the ministers are doing the work of the ministry. We're to train you up to do the work of the ministry. Deacons go wait on tables. The ministers do the work of the ministry. We're supposed to equip the saints to get out and be all about our Father's business. Thank you, Lord, for the anointing. You have no respect to person. The Spirit of the Lord is upon them. The Spirit of the Lord is upon them. It's the anointing that destroys the yoke. The anointing that destroys the yoke. That heals the broken heart. It's the anointing that sets captives free. That opens prison doors. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Did you want prayer tonight? You already had prayer? Okay. Everybody's heart and mind is clear? Okay. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Praise you, Jesus.
Yes.
Now, is there anyone that wants to be a member of the church or wants that covering? God said it's a solitarian family. God will give you a church family. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Where you can be loved, covered with love. Sunday school lesson this morning was awesome. You can be covered with love. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. We're taking our love offering up for Leslie Shar and this blessing through the day, and we want you to give your best. I'm giving 20. I don't know what Sherry gave, but let's be a blessing to the man and woman of God. They are very faithful here. We love them. I tell you, they are some really good people. You can't find any better than those two. So we got a lot of good people in this church that God is sending. And we have ministers coming that's helping us. The Lord prophesied that He would send people here that we wouldn't have to train. We didn't have to train Les and Shar. They came here already trained. Tina came here already trained. Bertha came already trained. There's a lot of people come here already been in the Word, already licensed. They're ready to be used, and we're thankful for that. We're thankful. Apostles need people to work under them that's already equipped. When Dave came, you were already equipped when you came here. You know the Word. There's people that's coming here that know the Word. Amen. Praise. Now I'm going to tell you, that girl over there, she know the Word. She was raised just like I was in the church on the pew. Probably was something to pacify while you laid on the pew. Yes. Can be God-given. Give it forward. I was listening to Vicky Hill this morning. Yesterday they were somewhere eating, and somebody came in and paid their whole bill for, this thing is coming up in August. And she said, well, since they paid my bill, I got to give it forward. She would have paid somebody else's bill. That's what you do. You give it forward. Hallelujah. Anybody else? Put your hand this way. Now, Father, you said, give. Everybody say the scripture with me. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, running over. That's it, right? Put the scripture up, please. It just left my mind. Let's start all over again. Give, and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give unto your bosom. And that's what we're releasing now, that people will give to you, that God will open their hearts and turn their hearts like river of water, and they will give you like happened to me yesterday. It'll happen to you. God has not forgotten the seeds you have planted. Just we rejoice and begin to praise God, because He will remember you.
Amen. It's time for our benediction. Will everyone please stand? The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make His face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up His countenance upon thee and give thee peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, center of attraction, and I will bless them. God bless. Go in peace.